The Oracle Network.
Welcome to Brew Crime, the podcast where we drink brews and talk crime, conspiracies, or whatever catches our attention. This is Mike, and my co-host
is a JT. I need to come up with some clever intro, but I'm just going to go with it's a me, a JT.
It's a me, a Mario. And funny enough, this is going to be the Halloween episode, so JT's now Mario. Or Bowser.
Fair. A little bit of both.
Exactly. So hopefully everyone is having or had a good Halloween. And we just want to mention to not forget we have a store. You can go to our website and find it by clicking on the store link, or you can go to tpublic.com/store/brew-crime-podcast. I wish there was a shorter version, but that's the link.
That's what we got. That's what they gave us. You get what you get, and you don't have a fit.
Yeah, exactly. But we got a bunch of different styles of logos. I'm sure it's, there's stickers, there's phone cases, whatever you want. Check it out. I think there's even pillows and stuff.
I want to start designing some stuff for us too, to see if we can add some designs and things to the store.
Absolutely can.
And so definitely do that. And if not that, there's a free thing you can do for us, and that's rate and review us on whatever podcast app you're using. Give us all the stars that you can.
Yes, exactly. And maybe you can do that for Christmas time, because I guess we'll announce it now. We're going to be doing what we're calling Hoppy Holidays, and we're going to try to produce a short episode for every day of the month in December.
That is 31 days of 10 minutes around such each day. And we're doing it for you.
And some of them are going to end up being longer, probably.
Especially since I'm involved now. Yeah, probably. But we're well on our way, and they're looking good. So I'm pretty excited to. And Mike and I don't really know what each other's covering. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah. And so if you can do anything for us, give us a Christmas present and leave us a review.
Yeah,
definitely helps us out.
Share us with your friends, because if there's anything I've learned in podcasting over the past year and a half or two, it's that really it's the listeners that drive the popularity, or at least drive more people to you. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what kind of advertising you have. It's all about you guys. It's all about the listeners. So the more you share, the more you bring people in, the better it's going to be.
And the more we can do.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm excited about this spooky, ooky Halloween episode.
All right. Well, I'm going to be going first. So the title of my story is Halloween Horror in Napa Valley. And the beer pairing that I have done for this episode is Phillips Brewing and Malting Co. Crookeder Tooth Barrel-Aged Pumpkin Ale. And it's got like a really creepy looking set of jack-o'-lanterns on the label.
Yeah, buddy.
But it's a 7.3% alcohol barrel-aged pumpkin ale. You don't see a lot of barrel-aged pumpkin ales, at least here.
Oh, really? They're really popular in the U.S.
Pumpkin ales have kind of dropped off a little bit here, so.
There's one that I've had that is beautiful, and it's by Saranac. And I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it's fantastic.
Nope.
I'm going to let you continue your review now.
Sounds good. It's got like a nice brownish, reddish color, tan head. It's definitely got the cinnamon and all the different clove and spices going on. A little bit sweet, not too sweet. Maybe a hint of oak on the nose. Quite malty. On the flavor, there's definitely a lot of malt. There's a bit of barrel character. There's cinnamon, nutmeg, clove. It's not really sweet, which can be a problem with some pumpkin ales.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if this actually has pumpkin in it or if it's just the pumpkin spices. No, it does. Yeah, it has pumpkin in it. Yeah, it's a nice... I haven't had a pumpkin ale in probably a couple of years now, and it tastes good.
I like that it has kind of that clovey spiciness to it, because to me that takes it from pumpkin and turns it into kind of a pumpkin pie-ish type taste.
I fucking hate pumpkin pie.
That explains why you haven't had a pumpkin ale in a while.
No, I've been a fan of them in the past. I drank too many of them over a couple years, and I just kind of got bored of them.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm not a huge pumpkin pie fan either, but if you can get a nice flavor that's not in a pie but tastes like pumpkin pie, for some reason I'm a fan. Don't ask me why. I'm just a enigma wrapped up in a mystery.
Yeah, well, I like pumpkin beers, and I don't like pumpkin pie, so who knows, right?
Right.
Love cranberries and cranberry juice, hate cranberry sauce. Who knows, right?
Well, now that's just silly. No, I'm kidding.
Halloween 2004 seemed like any Halloween in Napa Valley when three roommates, Adrienne Isangola, Leslie Mazzara, and Lauren Mienza, handed out candy to children at their home. The night seemed to go like any other night for the trio, and once the festivities were done and they ended their night, they would all head off to their bedrooms. Adrienne and Leslie were on the second floor while Lauren slept on the main floor of the house. Lauren would see a motion detector light go off outside between 1:30 and 2 a.m. behind the garage, but she wouldn't think too much of it, and once she stopped her dog from barking, she would start to fall back asleep. I mean,
we have that too.
Skunks run by or whatever, things, set off motion detector lights.
I like how skunk was your first animal you
There's
thought of.
so many fucking skunks here, so.
Oh, yeah. For real?
Stinky kitties, yeah.
Well, not...
I've seen tourists at Stanley Park, one of our big parks, like, oh, kitty! And I saw what it was, and I just turned and ran because it was too late. It's just like, no, that's not a kitty.
All you can do is let out a concerned moan and just be like, Americans.
It was actually some Chinese tourists, but yeah, it was just no. But I yelled and ran at the same time because I was way too close.
Immediately, it doesn't make for a fun vacation, but the stories afterwards.
Yes. Yes.
Kitty. Oh my God.
Adrienne had a cat, and it wasn't the only time that cat would trip the light, nocturnal feline trip. They're out, you got hunting mice or whatever.
Cats either wake you up by turning on a light or they claw you.
Yeah. Or they have zoomies at 3 a.m. and
nope.
Yeah. Only minutes after she would wake up to the sound of someone entering the house from what would turn out to be the kitchen window. But it wasn't immediately obvious, right? She just heard someone entering the house.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't think too much of it, as it was only recently that Leslie had her boyfriend over late at night, and it had caused the roommates to discuss if they should be able to bring over partners, as it did not happen until this point. But they all decided in the end it should be they should be able to.
I mean, I agree.
It sounded like there was some issues with it being a little loud that evening for some of the roommates.
Oh man.
Yeah. So that's the only reason why there was some discussions about it. Yeah.
How did you all of a sudden find religion? It was just, oh God, this and oh God, that. And I just don't understand.
Yeah. So it seemed that nothing was wrong at this point. So she fell back asleep. She would be woken up by a blood-curdling scream and then a scream from Adrienne. Oh my God, please help, please help. Lauren would get out of bed and walk to her door. She opened it up, and just as she did, she heard someone running down the stairs, crashing into things and breaking them as they came. So yeah, that's worrying, right?
I'm guessing this wasn't the boyfriend.
No. There was no mention of her dog, but she would be overcome with fear and bolt out the back door of their home. Unfortunately, into the backyard, there is no way out, as there's a large fence and appears to be no gate.
I'm telling you right now, I'd become a parkour champ real fast.
Yeah, no shit. Because of this, she would hide, not wanting to be found. She would hear someone in the front of the house trying to open the kitchen blinds. The house would finally fall silent except for cries for help from Adrienne. When she finally got up the courage, she ran into the kitchen to grab the phone and call 911. Unfortunately, the phone line had been cut, so there was no way to make that call.
Oh, man. Premeditation.
Yeah. When she realized that wasn't going to work, she headed up the stairs to see what had happened to her friends. What she would find would be horrifying. She would go to Leslie's room first and find her entire room's floor covered in blood. She was face down on a pile of clothes with multiple stab wounds all over her back and her arm.
Oh.
Yeah. Only a short distance away, Leslie was in her room, crouched behind her bed. She was bleeding out and could no longer speak due to many stab wounds. Lauren turned and ran down the stairs and grabbed her cell phone in her room. So luckily she still had a cell phone because this is pretty early.
Yeah, for real. I guess it was probably like one of those Nokia bricks.
Probably, 2004. There's not a lot of cell phones in 2004.
No.
She would dial 911 and start passing on the information to the operator when her cell phone disconnected. Fearing the home invader was still in the home, she would run out the front door and hop into her car. It was only after she was racing away that she would call the police again. Just get the fuck out, yeah.
Get out, yeah.
Police would find a small spatter of blood in the kitchen and some cigarette butts outside. They would end up collecting 266 pieces of potential evidence.
Wow.
Yeah. The police would go in high gear and take between 200 and 218 DNA samples from people and would do a total of between 1,000 and 1,300 interviews with people, but it would lead to no good suspects.
Holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
That's like having a full bibliography and reading it, and it helps nothing with a paper.
Yeah. This would go on for a total of 11 months to no avail. Finally, after 11 months, the police decided to take a chance with the cigarette butts, as the brand was new on the market at the time. The brand was Camel Turkish Gold, and with it being so new at the time of the murder, it could be a good clue.
Mm-hmm.
They would ask Lauren if they knew anyone who smoked, and she would rack her brain, and she could think of only one person, really, named Eric Matthew Kopel. He was a shy guy and married to a friend of the trio, Lily Prudhomme. She didn't suspect him at all, though. So the police would start looking for him. You know, you got to have someone as a suspect.
Yeah. You got to run through, at that point, you got to go with every lead you possibly can get.
Yeah. At the time, they had tested the cigarette butts with the latest and greatest DNA tests and found that not only did it match the blood in the kitchen, but that the DNA said that the killer was likely to have blue or green eyes, light-colored hair, and a Northwestern European ethnicity.
So they did they did genotyping with that DNA, which is fairly new, I think, in terms of finding somebody and being able to detail exactly kind of what they look like, at least in terms of some of the characteristics.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So the police would release these details, and soon after, Eric Matthew Kopel would turn himself in. He would never tell the courts why he did it, though. In court, he would get a plea deal where he would plead guilty to avoid the death penalty, but also waive his rights to appeals, and he will spend his entire life in prison. So there is that.
I mean, I'm glad that he pled guilty because it saves the families a lot of heartache.
Yeah.
And legal fees. But I never really understood why you would do that, because life in prison / death penalty. I mean, you're going to spend life in prison anyways in the death penalty because the backlog is forever.
Yeah.
So why not be on death row and have all of like these awesome privileges that you get? I
guess it depends on which death row, because some of them are awful and worse than General Pop, probably. So.
Yeah, that's possible. I guess I'm always just thinking, hey, they get a TV.
Yeah, no doubt. So he would be sentenced on January 11th, 2007. So it took a while to get him.
Yeah.
So who were Adrian Isangola, Leslie Mazzara, as well as their roommate that would live, you ask? Well, now I'll tell you. Lauren was an all-state athlete who had her political science degree, and Adrian Isangola was a civil engineer that happened to work for the city's sanitation district.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like an all-star roommate cast.
Yeah, like they're successful women.
For real, successful and powerful. Yeah. And I wonder if that played a part. We'll get there, I'm sure.
They were both in their 20s, and when they met, they decided to rent a home together in the city that they were both working in. So yeah, that was Napa. It was, it's not the hippest place, but
No, but it's a hella expensive place.
yeah,
I had a great uncle who lived in Napa with his wife, and it is not a cheap location. I
no,
mean, there's a lot of places in the U.S. now where it's like, even if you work full time, good luck affording anything, even rent.
that's like here.
So, yeah, yeah. I could only speak obviously to the U.S., but that is to share is a good plan these days.
Yeah, it is.
But that is a powerhouse, literally. I mean, it's a powerhouse.
They would have a friend, Ben Katz, help them move their stuff into the home in early 2004. When they decided to throw a little housewarming party, they did invite friends Lily Prudhomme and Eric Matthew Koppel. Later in the summer, they would have a third roommate move into the home in Leslie Mazzara. Leslie was a former beauty queen from South Carolina who worked in public relations.
Jeez.
The date was not mentioned, but sometime before Halloween, Eric and Lily, who had been engaged to be married, ended their engagement. Or should I say, Lily ended the engagement. Lily and Adrian had actually been planning a trip to Australia just before Halloween. She breaks it off with her fiancé. Adrian's like, let's fuck off to Australia and have a great time, right? Which is a great
Good
friend
day,
move,
mate.
right?
Yeah, totally.
The night of Halloween, Lily and Eric ended up at the same party and a fight would break out. There was even some whispers that Lily and Eric might have broken up because of Lily's friendship with Adrian. After the murder, but before Eric was arrested and charged, Lily and Eric would get back together and marry in February of 2005. Disgustingly, they would have the mother of Adrian read from the Bible at their wedding. Yeah. So it's definitely a bit scary to find out that you married the murderer of your friends.
Yeah, I'd say that was probably a bad choice. Should have swiped left.
Yeah. So to finish it off, Eric would attend a candlelight vigil that was put on by Adrian's friends only 2 weeks after their deaths. Oh yeah, and the murder weapon was never found.
I would imagine that's probably one of the things that made it so difficult. But yeah, I would call him a psychopath.
Yeah.
A lot of them like to see their work and how much pain it causes, not only during, but after. And how many times have we heard of that? It's like the old cliche of the person shows up to help find somebody. But
Yep.
That's messed up.
It really is, yeah. So that's my case.
Oh, man.
Yeah. He's a ghoul for sure.
I would call him that, and he got away with it for a while.
Yeah.
The only reason he could have turned himself in was just to save himself. Ugh.
Yeah. Well, I think it was kind of closing in on him, so it was just like, if you turn yourself in, you might get a little bit of leniency. You plead guilty, and you can get a deal, and,
And he did.
Yeah, because sometimes, like, you can see it closing in, right? A lot of criminals, it's just like, oh shit, they've got me. I better just do that because it looks better for me.
Yeah.
'Cause it's always about them.
Right. It absolutely is. I mean, they want to make that choice to turn themselves in.
Yeah.
Right. They don't want that choice made for themselves. So, oh man. I struggled to find a name for my case. This is quite the case. It's not your typical in terms of scary or well, it is scary.
Yeah.
It's just flat out weird. So I'm going to start off. Have you ever read Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal?
No, I have not.
Oh, it's a fantastic satire. So there's one quote in there that says, "I've been assured by a very knowing American of my acquaintance in London that a young, healthy child, well nursed, is at a year old a most delicious, nourishing, and wholesome food, whether stewed, roasted, baked, or boiled."
Oh, geez.
So, like I mentioned, this was originally meant as a satire, right?
Yeah.
Swift arranged his work to kind of attempt finding a cheap and easy method for changing the starving children of Ireland into useful citizens. And it was in response to the poor children of Catholic families living in wretched conditions because their families were too poor.
Yeah.
And Swift argued economically that turning this problem into a solution is simply to take all of the children and feed them to Ireland's rich landowners. Makes
Jeez.
sense.
I would go the opposite way and feed the landowners to the poor children, but
I like your thinking. I like that. So if anything, there's no way that cannibalism would be seen today outside in the real world. Of sure, Silence of the Lambs was a cultural revolution of sorts, but people
Yeah.
don't actually eat children or other people, right? I mean, other than stories and research we've heard about from, well, mostly National Geographic,
Yeah,
there aren't any
exactly.
cannibals. There aren't any cannibals in this culture we find ourselves in.
Not usually. I mean, I don't even think they mentioned that in Pizzagate. And there was a lot of bullshit in that. So
They were pulling bullshit from everywhere.
yeah, exactly.
Um, sure, there was Jeffrey Dahmer. Everybody knows about him. There was also Albert Fish, Joaquin Kroll, Arthur Shawcross, Tamara Sansanova, Peter Bryan, and Ed Gein. Okay, maybe it's a more popular habit than I thought.
Yeah. No.
So I heard about most of these folks, but the case I'm covering, which I have decided indeed to call Children in the Chili, is one that I hadn't heard of until I did a little more research.
I prefer ground beef. I don't know.
I mean, maybe they were on the ground. Who knows? They're closer to the ground. This is a terrible joke. I got to stop it. The beer that I chose, let's change the subject. The beer choice that I chose was it's again by Three Notched Brewing, which is from Charlottesville, Virginia, right down the road from me, and it is their Apple Crumb Amber Ale. It's got kind of a hazy amber brown body. It's got like an eggshell tan head.
It looks kind of like mine.
Yeah, it has some retention. It's got lacing in it. So it's kind of got a fruity aroma. It kind of smells like figs and brown sugar, but it smells a lot kind of like a Fig Newton, which
Ooh, nice.
isn't, yeah, either you love it or you don't. There's kind of a pear aroma too. It has a perfume character it just smells floral is what it smells like.
Nice.
And the flavor kind of closely matches the aroma. It kind of has this potpourri flowery flavor. There's kind of an aftertaste of pear and earthy hops. But the thing is that like some reviews will say that it tastes exactly like it's called, which is Apple Crumb, and some people say no, not at all.
Interesting.
And I would be one of those people that says I don't really taste it, you know. But I chose Apple Crumb because Halloween, and there's pumpkin, but there's also apples and things like that happen. So I figured it fit.
Yeah, I mean sweets in general, right? Apple crumbs, or apple crumbles and stuff are sweet.
Right. And there is some sweetness to this, but it's interesting. So this is a case that spurred a lot of changes, or at least was one of the reasons for the changes that were made, which you will hear a little bit about later. It's also one that branched into a million different directions because, of course, I seem to pick those kind of cases, whether I like it or not. It's probably no surprise to anybody. So I'm going to cover Nathaniel Bar-Jonah today, whose crimes span from Massachusetts to Montana and throughout possibly a few other states, and also possibly into Canada,
Ooh.
Alberta, and Saskatchewan. I'm going to make it a thing, damn it. So I wasn't able to find a lot about his super early life in terms of family or function, but I was able to determine with my completely uninformed opinion, other than the research I've done, that he was born evil. Absolutely evil.
There's definitely people like that.
This is it, and as we roll through this, you'll find out. So Bar-Jonah was born David Paul Brown on February 15th, 1957 in Worcester, Massachusetts, which is spelled Worcester, but is pronounced Worcester because reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's pretty much all I know until he was 6 or 7. But at this point, here's kind of where the roller coaster begins. And it's a shit roller coaster, though, because it's all downhill from here. For him, the justice system, whoever he came across. So leading up to the main murder, in 1964, he received a Ouija board for his birthday. I suppose that was pretty standard as a gift for a 7-year-old. Not entirely sure about that, but it does sound like a horrifying sequel to Paranormal Activity.
I mean, I don't care much about Ouija boards, but you know, they're made by Milton Bradley or something, aren't they?
That's the best.
I think that's the right brand.
It's really funny because they were originally made to entertain like high-end people, like rich people. And it just kind of made its way into like the common household. So he utilized this as a way to invite a 5-year-old girl into his basement. That is not what I was thinking of when I was at 7.
No.
It's creepy. He attempted to strangle her at that point.
That's not good.
No, and after hearing the child screaming, his mother ran in to intervene. In January of 1970, at the age of 12, he lured another neighbor to a nearby hill. He told the 6-year-old boy he wanted to go sledding with him. And when they arrived, the 12-year-old Bar-Jonah sexually assaulted the boy. And he apparently got away with this.
Wow.
A few years later, he tried to lure 2 boys riding their bikes down the road into a cemetery. He had the absolute intent on murdering them.
That is such a horror movie trope, too. Like, lead them into the cemetery, right?
Isn't it?
It's either that or run
hocus
up,
pocus.
It's either that or run up the stairs, in a house. And then, oh crap, the murderer's following me up.
Shit, where the hell do I go?
Yeah.
So one of the boys grew suspicious, and they both ended up not going, and they biked home. In 1975, at the age of 18, Bar-Jonah pled guilty after being arrested for dressing as a policeman and beating and choking an 8-year-old. This was Richard O'Connor, who he ordered into his car. Richard was on his way to school. A neighbor saw this happen and alerted the authorities, who immediately started looking for the boy. They found the car that was reported and ordered Bar-Jonah out. They found Richard in the car pretty bloodied up. He had defecated and urinated on himself from the sexual assault. And Bar-Jonah was sentenced to 1 year. 1 year of probation.
Oh, that fucking pisses me off.
Yeah, folks these days, they get more time for having marijuana on their person than he did. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's such bullshit.
So while on probation and a few days before his high school graduation, he drove to Hartford, Connecticut and donned his police officer outfit again. This time, he abducted a 9-year-old girl, and during the assault, she started vomiting and convulsing as a direct reaction to the assault. And quite honestly, this was probably the best thing she could have done, because he drove up to the sidewalk. He threw her out of the car.
Oh, now, no way. That is so lucky.
Now, that still sucks.
Yeah, well, yeah, but she's alive.
But she's alive. So he was arrested for this because someone saw the incident and wrote down the license plate. So here's the beginning of the justice system failure, right? He was on parole in a different town or state. This arrest and crime didn't get back to Bar-Jonah's probation officer, and he was released from parole in May of 1976. So when this probationary period was over, he received a letter thanking him for his, quote, cooperation. So in short, what the fuck?
Yeah.
We know that in the 70s, 80s, the states didn't communicate much, but I feel like this is kind of a big deal, right? At the end of September 1977, Nathan pulled the usual MO and was impersonating an FBI agent. So falsely promoting himself, right? He was just like, police wasn't enough. Let's go FBI. He convinced 2 boys, to get into his vehicle as they were leaving the movies in the city of Shrewsbury in the state of Massachusetts. He took them to a scheduled location that he had set up ahead of time. Once there, he handcuffed and tortured the boys. And let me preface this next bit by saying that Nathan Bar-Jonah is a whole lot of man. He's 370 pounds, 170 kilograms worth of man. He decided what he wanted to do near the end was jump multiple times on the chest of one of the boys.
Oh, Jesus.
So he then took the other boy, placed him in the trunk of his car. He thought the boy he jumped on was dead, but the kid, friggin' resilient kid. Not only that, but he regained consciousness. He found help, and he pretty quickly after that had Nathan arrested.
It's a good thing that kids have fucking bendy bones.
You're not kidding.
You know, like a kid falls like horribly and bounces up, maybe cries a little bit. I fall down in the same manner and I don't get back up.
No,
I don't.
No,
so
we do not.
They're so lucky that they were young and they weren't as brittle as we get even in our 30s and 40s.
Yeah. So like between the kids and everything else, the evidence was overwhelming. He was sentenced to 18 to 20 years for attempted murder. So here's the ridiculous thing, as if there wasn't enough in this story already. When he was sentenced, instead of being sent to prison, he was sent to a pseudo prison called Bridgewater State Hospital in southeastern Massachusetts because he was deemed, quote, sexually dangerous. And that's quite the fascinating institution because it's a state facility that houses the criminally insane and those whose sanity is currently being evaluated for those in the criminal justice system. Mm-hmm. In other words, it's both criminals and those who have been proven to have difficulties and those who might have them. So as I'm wont to do, I took a look into this hospital for a couple of reasons. One, it's clear that there's more to Nathan's story after this, and the concept of running across a hospital without looking into it's criminal in and of itself. So Bridgewater was established in 1855 as an almshouse, and they utilized it as a workhouse for inmates with shorter sentences due to the surrounding farmland. By the 70s, around the time Nathan was relocated there, Massachusetts Correctional Institution at Bridgewater had 4 separate facilities, including the State Hospital for the Criminally Insane, the Treatment Center for Sexually Dangerous Persons, a center for alcoholics, and a minimum security prison. It was rebuilt twice, the last time in 1974. So there's been a massive number of scandals with this location.
I believe it. It usually is with places like that, right?
Yeah. So in 1968, a study showed 30 inmates were committed illegally. Many of the prisoners were still there because they didn't have the skills or the money to hire representation. And a lot of folks had terms that had already been up.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. So I'm going to give you an example. Charles, who was a patient who was sentenced in 1910 for breaking and entering, came to Bridgewater. The max time for that sentence is 2 years. And despite that, he was still there after 1967.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. So the end of the 60s saw an investigation into cruel and inhumane treatment. There were problems with the water, sewage, medical, kitchen, and rec facilities. And in addition, at some point in the late 80s, they were housing criminals alongside those classified as criminally insane and otherwise, despite promises to cut it out, they kept going. And it was covered in a Nightline special with Ted Koppel. And then it was revisited after the promises were not followed through. And it took until September 2016 that the governor announced the hospital would stop using the historical prison model and would move towards more of a clinical model for those who were there and mentally ill.
What the actual fuck? That is so insane.
All
Wrong word, but that's awful. Like,
it's
how
terrible.
The hell is that possible?
Right.
How?
And I wrote how quaint, how appropriate, how decades behind.
Yeah, no shit.
So this is where Bar-Jonah was housed, right? During his time in the hospital, he changed his name. As mentioned in the beginning, he was born David Paul Brown, and he wasn't a huge fan, but really it came down to something else. Originally, he changed his name to Nathaniel Benjamin Levi Bar-Jonah. And there are so many reasons one would wish to change their name legally. So I'm going to let you guess why he did.
I don't know, because he picked an awful name there in the end. It's too many names!
So the bottom line is there's really no guessing. It's not possible. He told his friends and family that he changed his name because he wanted to know what it was like to be discriminated against and persecuted as a Jew.
Fucking hell. Jesus Christ.
Yes, sir.
How does
so?
What?
This is the thing, right? I love covering these guys because there's this just dumb shit. So he also claimed at some point to be Jewish, and he wanted his name to showcase that. Later on, he said he was Jewish, and he wanted his name to match. Who the fuck knows? So
maybe he does belong there.
You're not kidding. So we've seen failure of the justice system so far regarding him, but here's where it gets even worse. While Nathan was at Bridgewater, he told psychiatrists repeatedly about having sexual fantasies involving murder, torture, dissection, and cannibalism.
That doesn't sound like a red flag.
No, not at all. No, not at all. It's a massive red flag throwing up smoke signals while tapping out Morse code.
Yeah, no shit.
So in 1991, he was released after a Suffolk Superior Court judge believed 2 psychologists who said Bar-Jonah was no longer a danger. I'm just going to kind of let that sink in for a second.
I'm going to deflate a little bit here.
Yeah. Big old sigh. They basically took advantage of a hell of a generous loophole in state sentencing laws. There was something that said that with good behavior, inmates could take 12 and a half days off their sentence for each month served. So this guy who strongly confessed his fantasies that I mentioned was let out 5 years early.
Holy fuck, that is a stupid law.
It's really dumb. So Nathan said post-release or post-notice of release, and of course, you know, as anybody, he found Jailhouse Jesus. He said, yeah, I've seen God take a hopeless situation, like when all avenues were closed, it seemed, and I'd never, ever be released. Yet God told me I would, and I believed him, even though the evidence of my release was not there. Then totally out of left field, I got two Christian psychiatrists who believed in me. That was a miracle in itself to find 2 Christians in that profession in Massachusetts. The state had a lot of evidence on their side, yet the judge sided with me. Ugh.
I love the fact that it said it was hard to believe there was Christians in that position in that state. Like, what?
Which is really crazy because Catholics in Massachusetts is just rife with it.
Yeah,
So
I mean, there's been some issues in Massachusetts with Catholics, but there's a lot of them.
it's true. So we don't have to go too far from this, but a month after his release, August 9th, 1991, he saw a boy sitting alone. The 7-year-old boy was in a car alone outside of a post office in Oxford, Massachusetts. Nathan weighed 275 pounds at the time. He walked up to the vehicle, he entered the vehicle, and he sat on the boy.
Jesus.
He shoved himself up against the boy's chest. He couldn't breathe. This was during the day, and there were witnesses. The mother saw him doing this, and Nathan fled. It's just ridiculous. So he was
so messed up.
I can't imagine being like, I'm going to take my massive frame and sit on my 5-year-old.
Yeah, no.
So he was arrested later. Duh.
Yeah.
His excuse was that he got into the car to get out of the rain. This guy.
First off, bullshit. Second off, you'd pick a seat that wasn't occupied by a child.
You'd think so. I mean, unless he couldn't like see around. I don't know. I don't get it. So he later said he wanted to kill the kid. Duh.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for stating the obvious. Bar-Jonah, here we go. Bar-Jonah somehow, if you weren't pissed yet, you're going to be pissed now. Bar-Jonah somehow worked out a plea deal with the Worcester County prosecutors. In short, instead of jail time, he was given a 2-year suspended sentence, and the condition was that he moved to Montana to live with his mother.
What the fuck?
In other words, get the hell out of our hair. We're tired of wasting our resources on you. You are Montana's problem now.
Jesus. As Montana, I'd be like, fuck you. You keep your own monster.
Oh, you wait. So the probation officer from Montana said, quote, "It was slam bam, thank you, ma'am. And those prosecutors, defense attorneys, and judges should be ashamed. They set up Montana."
Mm-hmm.
So when Nathan made it to Montana, so did his file. But what Montana got was extremely small. They didn't get much at all. And the probation officer said it was extremely weird and unusual to get a file that tiny. And when Bar-Jonah met with the probation officer, he was candid and told him everything. He was really, really candid. And the probation officer, Mike Redpath, he said that there was an apparent violation of the plea agreement. Quote, "I said we don't want this guy. But the word we got back from Massachusetts was that they basically said, tough. He's there. We're not going to take him back." It's ridiculous.
That sure is.
So the 2 years of probation that he had in Montana were uneventful. He set up a job quickly, but bounced around from one food joint to another. He worked at places as a cook. He supplemented income by selling toys to children at flea markets from his garage. So we can already see how that's going to go.
Yeah, not well.
Yep. His former fiance in Great Falls, Montana, said he would spend hours upon hours in the garage and said his garage would basically be a paradise for kids. So it's hard to assume that he was behaving well on probation. There are mentions of him in various states, and there's even discussions that he did head into Alberta and Saskatchewan. They were kind of looking into that for a while, but I didn't find anything further. But, why are we here, right? Mainly for the crime he committed in Great Falls, Montana, February 6, 1996. So Zachary Xerxes Ramsey was born December 18th, 1985, and was 10 years old at the time of the brutal attack. He was 4'0", and he barely weighed 100 pounds. Barely. Mm-hmm. So Zach walked to school that morning just like he did every morning. He attended Whittier Elementary, and it wasn't that far away. And at no time did anyone from any part of Zachary's life fear for his safety. Then again, at the same time, nobody realized that there was a monster living in that town either, thanks to a failure regarding probation files and the lack of a need at that point to report moving, and that one is a child sex offender or sex offender in general. So Zach left his mom's apartment on the 400 block of 4th Street North just after 7:30 a.m. He entered an alley as he walked to school, which was only 6 blocks away. He noticed a man sitting in an off-white 4-door sedan, and we can assume he probably picked up the pace to school because he was smart, and if he wasn't comfortable, he probably wanted to get out of the alley as quickly as possible.
Yeah, for sure.
What we know from there is limited. We do know that Zach's friends probably just thought he was sick and stayed home. He was marked absent by his teacher, and thanks to a policy, his mother was notified that he never arrived. So Zach's mom worked at a restaurant in town and was alarmed when she got the call after 10 that morning, which, yeah, I have been recently,
yes,
and would be quite alarmed. So Zach's mom was raising 3 kids, Zach and 2 others, 5 and 2. And Zach's dad was a U.S. Air Force staff sergeant stationed at Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado Springs, Colorado. I don't know anything more about his dad. I mean, I've heard plenty where military guys will get stationed somewhere. They geo-batch, which means basically they just move by themselves. And sometimes that results in a lesser time needing to be spent in one location.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can either come back to your family or take your family to the next place. But I don't know anything about him other than that's where he was stationed. His mom said, quote, "I wondered if he was skipping school. I went home. He wasn't there, so I immediately went to the school. My concern was not to freak out. My concern was to get as much information at that moment as possible." I would literally be losing my shit.
Oh, if I had kids, I would be too. Like, that's scary as fuck.
Yeah. So she searched the neighborhood, but there was no sign of him. She called police and told them that Zach was not a shy boy. He liked talking to people and that it wouldn't be weird if he said hello to a stranger. She taught him to never get in the car with someone he didn't know, though. And he understood that. And while there wasn't any assumption regarding him probably running away, Zach had attempted it just once in January that year, but, quote, "He was only gone for about an hour, and knowing that his mother would be worried sick about him, he called her from a restaurant and asked her to come get him." So I think he learned his lesson.
Yeah, for sure.
But it was like Zachary vanished into thin air, just gone. At that point, police asked for a description of Zach. So here's what she said. He was just a week shy of being a Christmas baby. He was the product of an interracial marriage and had a dark complexion with dark hair and brown eyes. He had a small scar on his forehead between his eyebrows and wore glasses, but he didn't have them that day. He had blotchy skin at the time he disappeared and dimples. He left dressed in stonewashed jeans, football jersey with his name, black high-top tennis shoes, and a blue denim baseball jacket with green sleeves. Cue the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Police started going door to door, and search parties searched banks of the Missouri River at many points in the town, and they conducted searches at Gibson Park. They dug their snowbanks, used bloodhounds, and they tried their hardest to find him. They didn't. So while interviewed, one neighbor said he saw a man parked in the alley directly behind a house in the 400 block of 5th Avenue North sometime between 7 and 7:15 a.m. He described it as a small, off-white, 4-door car. Later, family members also said they saw Zach around 7:30 a.m. when he walked down the alley. And another witness said they saw Zach around 7:45 a.m. as he crossed 6th Street North and that a man was following him. They said the boy was crying and the man was upset. The time frame was a little skewed, but it's possible Zach stopped to talk to the man. The man said something that made him upset, and that delayed Zach. They ran photos. They put them everywhere. They were counting on the community. Great Falls Police and the FBI were involved. Detective Bill Belushi of, I'm assuming it's Belushi, Bellusci. I'm going to go with Belushi. So, yeah. He was from the Great Falls Police Department, though he might have known who took Zach. And he and the FBI pursued it. And this involved a man by the name of Nathaniel Bar-Jonah. But the list of sex offenders that lived near Zach did not include Nathan's name. Quote, "The day Zach turned up missing, I went over to Nate's place. He wasn't there. The house was dark. Bar-Jonah stood out in my mind because I'd worked with him before. I knew he had been violent before, and I knew he was still active." So the next day, Belushi asked 2 uniformed officers to go question Nathan. No one responded, and the house was dark. Quote, "With little else that they could do, the officers placed a business card on the door to Bar-Jonah's home asking that he call when he returned. He never called, and the police never followed up."
Of course not. Because why would you do that?
Right. And I mean, in their defense, folks were inundating the police department with tips.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
There was the occasional clue, but there were sightings and theories as well. And while initially it doesn't waste much time to answer the phone, following up on every lead does. So that did kind of delay them a little bit. So Belushi approached prosecuting attorney Brant Light about obtaining a warrant to search the duplex home of Bar-Jonah, the one he shared with his mother. The attorney decided there wasn't sufficient cause or evidence tying the case to Nathan. So there was a further connection between Bar-Jonah and Zachary. And that was that Bar-Jonah was known to work in the area of Zach's home and school, shoveling snow off the sidewalks. They also attended the same church at various times, because, of course. Mm-hmm. And Bar-Jonah spoke to an acquaintance about Zach only days before his disappearance. Nathan was also known to drive his mother's 1997 Toyota Camry, which was an off-white in color and similar to what was reported. But of course,
Red flags. Red flags.
right, all of this is circumstantial evidence, right? So at this point, they didn't exclude other possible suspects. In fact, they were told to run through the entire list of sex offenders before getting to Nathan, and they even hadn't ruled out Zach's mother yet, to be honest with you. So here's how Nathaniel Bar-Jonah was caught. Early on the morning of December 13th, 1999, Detective Robert Burton was driving to work at the Great Falls Police Department when he saw Nathaniel Bar-Jonah walking near an elementary school. The 9-year veteran of the department recognized Bar-Jonah from his prior scrapes with the law in Great Falls, including the 93 incident in which Bar-Jonah had been charged with sexual assault for allegedly fondling an 8-year-old boy that he had been babysitting. Burton contacted his dispatcher and requested that a patrol unit be sent to the area. It was dark outside when officers Brunk and Badgley, within minutes of being dispatched, arrived on location. By the way, Brunk and Badgley, the best partner duo of cops ever.
Yeah, it's pretty damn good. Riggs and Murtaugh, them.
Right. So they located Bar-Jonah. Brunk turned on his patrol car spotlights and shined it on him. Bar-Jonah was dressed in a dark blue jacket similar to that which a police officer might wear, and he had a knit cap on. Brunk instructed Bar-Jonah to remove his hands from his pockets. Bar-Jonah ignored Brunk's request. Brunk made a request a second time, and with Officer Badgley standing by his backup, Brunk asked Bar-Jonah if he had something in his pocket. Bar-Jonah hesitated and then responded that he was carrying a stun gun. Bar-Jonah was instructed to place his hands on Brunk's patrol car. Badgley conducted a pat-down search, and he found 2 cans of pepper spray, a toy gun, and a badge. So now there's enough for a search warrant. Bar-Jonah was also charged with impersonation of a police officer and carrying a concealed weapon, which is the toy gun.
Yes.
So on December 15th, 1999, a search warrant was drafted and quickly approved. Here's what they found in his apartment on the initial search: a blue police coat, a silver toy revolver, a badge, a stun gun, a baseball-style hat that had security enforcement on it, 2 disposable cameras, 2 albums with cutouts of children inside, a coat with a badge inside one of the pockets, and many other photographs and negatives. They also found a pulley on which a rope, cord, or chain could be connected attached to the kitchen ceiling, and a document that described how to tie a variety of knots, and an article entitled Autoerotic Asphyxia.
That is not at all worrying.
No, not at all. So 2 days later, Belushi applied for and was granted a second search warrant. He was looking for additional photos of young children, adults, both, and any undeveloped film. And they found bulletin board containing numerous pictures, undeveloped film on disposable cameras, 28 boxes containing miscellaneous papers and newspaper clippings, and a list of Bar-Jonah's previous victims, which also happened to contain the name Zachary Ramsey. So Belushi said, quote, "There are lists of children that you can just turn page after page after page." He had notebooks where there's pictures of children cut out of annual school books and newspapers with their names underneath, just like basically collecting baseball cards.
Gross.
So there were many boys in that book from Webster, Massachusetts, 3 of which he was convicted of abducting in the mid-1970s. Police thought half of the 54 names were children Bar-Jonah grew up with. So when everything was said and done, there were at least 3,500 photographs of children found inside that apartment. When the undeveloped film was developed and prints were made, there was Bar-Jonah and 3 boys in various states of undress.
That is not good. That is not good.
No.
Fuck this guy.
Yeah. So they also found some encrypted letters while they were searching, and they sent those to the FBI, who decoded them. And I'm sure they didn't expect what they found, nor would they have initially thought it was accurate. I myself would have decoded these and said, nah, I gotta have this wrong. Because here are a few phrases: little boy stew, little boy pot pie, lunch is served on the patio with roasted child, and barbecue be some young guy.
Yeah, I would be confused by that too. That, yeah, not good. Uh-oh.
So the messages talked about cannibalistic recipes, and it talked about things that he had cooked and served to neighbors, friends, and family. In addition to everything else, police took control of a large section of plywood from his home during one of their searches. The plywood had a large smear across it, wide and indelible, and there was evidence that it was scrubbed repeatedly with bleach. And the plywood had also been hit many times with sharp objects, and a lot of folks thought it might have been used as a cutting board. Police also seized a meat grinder in which they found hair inside of it.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. They also dug up portions of his garage and sifted through 2 tons of dirt, and they found 21 fragments of human bones. Even after they were tested by DNA, those weren't to match Zachary. So they didn't find Zachary, they found somebody else. Detectives also wanted to examine the sewer pipes beneath the house. The new owner said that, quote, the pipes had all been replaced after Bar-Jonah moved out because they were always getting clogged. They interviewed friends and neighbors, and witnesses claimed that Bar-Jonah held cookouts for his mother, neighbors, and friends after Zachary's disappearance. He made spaghetti with meat sauce, casseroles, meat pies, and charbroiled deer burgers. Bar-Jonah's diners told police they thought the meat had tasted strange, and they told Bar-Jonah, but he said he had gone hunting and shot a deer, butchered it, and wrapped it himself.
Oh my God, it's almost as bad as why am I
Sweeney Todd?
Well, no, not Sweeney Todd, but yeah, like Mrs. Lovett and Sweeney Todd for sure. It reminds me of Willie Picton, right?
Yeah, Willie Picton and his pigs.
Yeah, and I mean, he was doing big parties in the barn and feeding the pigs to people that came to the parties, especially the bands.
He's such a dude.
Yeah, yeah.
So nobody remembers that he would ever hunt, nor did he have a hunting license. In addition, they searched his financial records and found that he had not purchased anything significant at a grocery store for a month after Zach disappeared. So, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right. Speculation also ran that he could have used his employment at Malmstrom Air Force Base and Hardee's to get rid of evidence by feeding it to unsuspecting servicemen and women on the military base and folks at the fast food restaurant.
Oh.
And I'll be honest, there wasn't evidence to prove this. But, of course, you talk about a possible cannibal and theories will run wild, right?
Oh, fuck yeah.
So at a certain point, he made statements allegedly that Zach's body would never be found because it had been, quote, chopped up and strewn about at variety of locations. Witnesses also stated that they saw a bag filled with soiled clothing the size that would fit a young boy beside Bar-Jonah's apartment, as well as a pair of gloves stained with blood. By July 5th, 2000, Bar-Jonah was charged with 3 counts of sexual assault, 1 count of aggravated kidnapping, and 1 count of assault with a weapon after teens came and confirmed that Bar-Jonah had sexually abused them as well. So, and that also included his cousin. And those 2 kids lived directly above Bar-Jonah's apartment and were confirmed victims after investigators found photos of them in Bar-Jonah's collection.
Jeez.
Bar-Jonah was difficult in court. There was a lot of legal maneuvering during his case, mostly motions to throw out evidence, requests for changes of venue, and changes in legal representation because of a lawyer that wanted to be off the case. Eventually, the trial started February 20th, 2002 in Butte, Montana. Prosecutor Brant Light said that Bar-Jonah groomed his victims, spending months befriending the children so that he could one day sexually abuse them. Quote, "This is a man who at age 42 had only one ambition, to pursue young boys and molest them." In the end, the court decided Nathaniel Bar-Jonah was a level 3 sex offender posing extreme danger to society. He was sentenced to Montana State Prison for 10 years for aggravated kidnapping conviction, 100 years for the sexual assault conviction, and 20 years for the felony assault conviction.
Good.
So you might ask why he wasn't sentenced for Zachary Ramsey's murder. After all, this was the whole point, right?
Yeah.
Zachary's mother held on to the fact that he was still alive, despite all of the circumstantial evidence to the contrary. And honestly, there's no blame given there. I'd want to believe my child was alive no matter what was presented or what was put in front of me. Bar-Jonah told her, quote, that he had hunted, killed, butchered, and wrapped the meat of her son. So she didn't think Bar-Jonah had anything to do with his disappearance, though. She saw a VHS tape that she thought she saw Zach playing. This was, I think the VHS tape was taken in like Switzerland. This was proven incorrect, but she still continued to think Zach was alive.
Yeah,
especially since especially since a psychic confirmed it, because psychics like to prey on mothers, right?
Charge the psychics that are faking things like this.
For real. So Nathaniel Bar-Jonah died Monday, April 14th, 2008 while in prison. He died of a heart attack, for lack of a better phrase, and that was probably due to the large size of his body and just wear and tear over time.
Yeah, I mean, he said almost 400 pounds, right?
Right. If anything good came out of this, and a few other cases like this, it was Megan's Law. And this is the name for a federal law, an informal name for state laws in the U.S. that require law enforcement authorities to make information available to the public regarding registered sex offenders. And this created the sex offender registry that is interstate. So, children in the chili, and Nathaniel Bar-Jonah, who is an absolute wreck of a human being.
Yeah, monster.
And this is one of those cases that just kind of unfolded itself as I went.
Yeah, no doubt.
But in short, he was a dick.
Yeah. I wish that Canada's sex offender registry was open to the public. It's not. It's closed.
Oh, really?
When a sex offender moves into a neighborhood, often the RCMP or the local police will announce it publicly, but the list itself is closed. I wish they would change that. I hope they will. I think it's important to have that public. But
I feel like I wish we did both, right? Because depending on what state you're in, it kind of depends on how they handle it. Now, for the majority of states, there is a directory you can always search. But that's pretty passive because you have to know where the directory is, right? Having like RCMP or whoever else who's police notify you when somebody moves in your neighborhood is a very active way to let people know.
Yeah.
I wish that we could combine the two. And have the best of both worlds, because there are so many people that just don't know that website for Virginia exists.
Yeah, for sure.
And it does. And it's very clear where people live and what they've done and what their charges were. And although I would never immediately assume something about somebody, because a lot of things can happen to get those kind of charges, it still allows me to be cautious and wary, especially for my children and just in general. So
I think the only worry is, like, I know it's happened in Canada where, you've had a couple too many drinks, you take a piss near a playground, and you get caught by a cop, and you can end up on that registry too. Maybe those people shouldn't be publicly available because it's likely just the fact that they had to piss and it was just where they went. They weren't trying to expose themselves to kids. The kids probably weren't even there because it's often later in the day.
Right.
But people that actually actively prey on children, that should be public knowledge.
Oh, absolutely. There was a house down the road from where I used to live, and the guy always used to have this big old Christmas display. In fact, he was featured on TV in like national episodes of this Christmas house battle. And it was like literally a quarter-mile walk down the road. And we take the kids there. And then about a year before we moved, we realized that he was arrested for child pornography.
Fuck.
And all I could think of was, that's fucking why you had that display.
Yeah.
Which maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but I sure as fuck was happy that I moved. Because I wasn't about to, and that's not why I moved, but because they moved and that was fine. But
yeah,
it's things like that people need to know about because they're predators.
Yeah.
And they're bastards and assholes that prey on the children who can't defend themselves and usually don't have a voice. And I have no room in my world for that. And I have a lot more harsher opinions about that, but I'll leave them for now. And we'll just say that that's the end of the case.
Yes. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to send us a message, you can send it to brewcrime@pacificbeerchat.com. If you want to hit us up on social media, go to @brewcrime and all those social medias. And JT has a Twitter now.
JT Brews Crime. And I do want to say, if you join Instagram, you'll see an awesome Halloween picture of Mike in a maid's outfit.
You probably won't because it's never happened. But that is funny. No. That was a trick, not a treat. It would definitely not be a treat.
I don't know. Yeah. There's an audience for everything.
That's true. It's true. And if you want to find our sources, you can go to brewcrime.com and hit up the episode link, and it'll have all the sources there and everything. And if you want to support us, you can go to patreon.com/brewcrime. The money goes towards upgrading our equipment, making the show better. And also you get a free episode a month, the Half Pint of Crime, and you get our episodes ad-free. So shout out to our Patreon supporters, True Crime Nana, 3 Beers In Podcast, Amber, and the Faves of Our Lives. Cheers.
Bye.
All cases on Brew Crime are written by Mike and JT or a writer we credit on the episode, and sources are put into our show notes for each episode. We always want to give credit to the people that research the cases we talk about. Check out our store at tpublic.com/stores/brew-crime-podcast, where you can purchase gear like t-shirts, phone cases, stickers, pillows, and all kinds of other cool stuff. Brew Crime's intro was created by Mike using Creative Commons Attribution licensed audio from purple-planet.com, soundbible.com, and freesoundeffects.com. Logo designed by Ben Greenberg. Thanks for listening to this episode of Brew Crime Podcast.
Well, hey there. I'm Melanie Peterson, the host of Mask of Sanity. Buckle up, my friends, and come on a journey with me as I take you through the cases of some of the world's most notorious killers and root for the brave men and women who brought them to justice. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and hear all about the calculated madness of some of the world's most brutal killers who hid behind the Mask of Sanity. Don't forget to follow Mask of Sanity on all social media to stay up to date on each week's episode. Until next time, stay safe, friends.
I would cry.
Yeah, no shit. All right.
There's a lot. This is a weird beer.
Nice. Apple crumble or apple crumb?
Yeah. Apple crumb. Also, I don't know why that's reversed. I don't like that. Can I fix that?
Oh, it's only reversed for you.
Oh, you see it?
Yeah, it Halloween Horror and Nappy. Not Nappy. Well, let's do that again. Halloween 2004 seemed like any Halloween in Napa Valley. Oh, wait. I don't have this open properly. The brand was Camel Turkish Gold, and and with it being so new at the time of the murder, I'm going to do that again. Let me just read the sentence again.
Amble? It's one of the boys' groups.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Because here are a few available at the public. Shoot. I'm going to try that again.
Yeah.